Hello everyone. In this lesson, we will learn about named lists and indexing. So by the end of the lesson, you will learn to assign names to list items in R and perform indexing using these names. So if you want to create a named list, you can do so like this. You will specify your list function, in which case you want to create your list. And we mainly are using the data structure vectors for creating our list. So all you have to do is just assign a name to this particular vector. So such as name1 equals your vector, name2 equals your vector, and so on. Let's go to R and demonstrate this. Okay, now let us create our list object, and I would like to name it as named list. And then I have my list function. Press enter for indentation, and then you pass in the vector, which is going to be your first list. So I'm going to create a vector of numeric values. So let's have something like 100, 200, 300, 40.2. And then let's have our second vector, which is going to be our second list. And so let's create a vector of integers. So let's simply have 90L, 40L, and then perhaps minus 6L. Now, this is how we used to create our list, if you recall from the previous videos. At this point, all we want to do is to name these lists. So for example, the very first vector, which is going to be our first list, I would like to name it as number. So simply give the name of that list item and then followed by the equal sign in order to assign this vector to that name. And then for the second list, I would also like to call it integers. And so for my third list, let me just simply call it languages. And then I'm going to also have a vector of programming languages. So let me have Python here. And let's proceed with R. And then let's say SQL, structured query language. And then let's create a fourth list, which we are going to call as booleans, which is going to be a vector of logical values. So let's have true, false in there. And then let's create our final list, which is going to be complex type. And I would simply have a vector of complex values. So let me have 2 plus 7i and then 6 minus 2i. So this is how you create the name list. And so let's execute this code and we'll see how that looks like when we print it to the console. So by executing this code and now printing named list to the console, this is what we get. And now instead of the double square bracket with the position of the list items here, we now have the names that we have assigned to the various lists. So we now have $sign and then the name of that first list, which is numbers. We have the $sign and then integers, $sign languages. Now this $sign has a meaning, and that is going to be very helpful in indexing. So now that you know how to name the various list items within your list object, then we will now go ahead and do the indexing. So let's clear the console first and let's do the indexing. If you remember, if you want to do indexing of list, all you have to do is specify the name of the list. And so that is going to be named list. And if you wanted to actually call out the very first list, then you would follow it with double square bracket and you put in the position of that list, which is 1. So that is going to call the first list. And that is what we get here. So that still works. This is what we call indexing by position. But this time, we have actually given this list names. We have numbers, integers, languages, booleans, complex type. So instead of using the double square bracket with the position of the list, all you have to do is just follow it with the $sign. And once you do that, you will find an IntelliSense containing all the names that you have assigned to the list items. So let's say I wanted to call out the languages, then I would just simply click that to autocomplete and execute, and we simply have our list of characters containing the programming languages that we have here. So again, if I wanted to call out, let's say, the very first list, then I would write the name of my list object, which is named list, followed by the $sign, and you can type it out, or you can simply use the down and up arrow keys to navigate through the IntelliSense and select the very list which you want to call out. So I want to call out numbers. I will just simply select numbers, press enter to autocomplete, execute, and then you will have your values right here. So this is how you can actually create named lists, and then you can also index them using the $sign. Now, there is one more thing that I want to show you. For example, if I really wanted to change the last value 40.2 to, let's say, 400, then it's very simple. All you have to do is just specify the named list object followed by the $sign, and then we have the first list, which has been named as numbers. And we know that when you execute this line of code, you're actually going to get these values. And that is a vector of numeric value. So all you have to do is now index this very vector. So I will now follow it with a single square bracket, and within it, specify the position of this number, which is 4. And if I execute that, you realize that we do get the value 40.2. That means we are accessing the fourth item in the very first list called numbers. But if I wanted to replace it, then all I have to do is do an assignment operation. So I would go ahead and bring the assignment operator and just simply assign the value of 400 to that. So essentially what you are doing is that go into the list object which has been named as named list. Then let's access the very first list which has been named as numbers. Access the fourth item in that vector and simply replace it with the number 400. So if I go ahead and execute this code, and then I now print the named list, you would notice that the value has actually changed from 40.2 to 400. So all the skills that you have learned so far can also be applied as we progress through the lessons.